Notícias do Campo, Especial, está com Lodi Balgrave, o diretor do Grupo de Pesquisa em Criminologia Juvenil da Universidade Católica de Leuven, na Bélgica. Ele está participando do primeiro Seminário Internacional de Justiça Restaurativa, que conta com a presença de especialistas mundiais na área. O evento faz parte da comemoração dos 40 anos da UniABC. Eu quero agradecer a participação em nosso programa. E começando com a pergunta, o que é justiça restaurativa?
Restorative justice is, in fact, a complete turnaround in thinking about crime. Instead of thinking about what should we do to the offender, the first question now is what is the harm, what is the suffering caused by the crime, and how can we contribute to its reparation? To achieve this in restorative justice, we rely very much on the potentials of both the victim and the offender, but also other supporters of victims and offender, on their capacities to find themselves a solution and to see how it can be repaired. I think that's the basic idea. Of course, there are lots of questions on how you do that concretely, but that's the basic idea.
O senhor considera a justiça restaurativa como uma terceira via?
Yes, you could say restorative justice is a third way, because the traditional way of responding to crime is, of course, by punishing. And for juveniles, we sometimes think more in terms of treating, helping, reintegrating young offenders. In restorative justice, we do in fact not primarily think about what to do to the offender, but we think now how to repair. And the first person who we are considering is in fact the victim. Of course, we think also of the offender, how the offender can contribute to the reparation towards the victim, but the first concern is now the victim.
Quais momentos que ela deve ser usada?
Theoretically, for all crimes, because all crimes cause harm, make victims, cause suffering, and so on. And every time, these harms and suffering should be repaired. In practice, you must see. I think there are basically two possible limits to the possibilities of restorative justice. On the one hand, you have a number of cases where the offender does not have the mental capacities because the age, because of mental insanity, to cooperate meaningful to the restoration. And the other possible exception is public security. In some cases, the offenders have committed such a serious crimes and there is justified fear that they will re-offend again, that the first concern then must be indeed to incapacitate these persons so that they cannot re-offend. There are limits to restorative justice, but for the rest, I would say, try it and you will see.
Deve ser programa usado de forma coercitiva?
Yeah, restorative justice is first of all about repairing, restoring, and the best possible restoration you can achieve by cooperation. If the offender can be motivated, convinced, in contact with the victim to do something, to make reparative gestures, it's the best thing. But sometimes offenders do not cooperate, or also victims do not want to speak with the offenders. At that moment, you can think of a coercive intervention by a justice system, but even there, the justice system should first of all think of making as much as possible reparation possible. For example, by imposing a fine, but the fine itself would be for the benefits of a victim's fund, or by imposing on the offender indeed a recompensation, material restitution to the victim. But also by imposing, for example, community service, where you could say that the offender has to work for the benefits of the social life, of community life. So it can be coercive, yes. But in the last possibility, the voluntary, freely accepted processes are by far preferable.
Qual é o papel da defesa nos procedimentos restaurativos?
Even in a restorative justice process, even in, for example, in a mediation where victim and offenders meet each other and try to find a solution, even in such a situation, victim and offender have also legal rights. For example, that the outcome of their meeting is more or less proportionate to the seriousness of the harm. In other situations, for example in New Zealand, but also in Belgium, you have family group conferences where offender and victim come together with their families and with their friends, with all the persons they want to invite. They come and all together they discuss. Of course, there is a professional facilitator who organizes the meeting, and there you see that the lawyers are even present during the meeting. Not that they will speak everything, it's up to the persons themselves to say what they have to say, but as a consultant in the background.
Num dos seus livros, o senhor fala da relação entre conceitos e práticas da justiça restaurativa, com a lei e o sistema jurídico. Como os procedimentos e essas práticas da justiça restaurativa podem ser combinadas com as normas jurídicas, com os preceitos, com as garantias?
There is a permanent tension, you must admit that, because on the one hand, the legal system, the judicial system, is characterized by great formalism. Everything is decided, everything is legal, the whole procedure has to be checked, there is proportionality and so on. Whereas the main tool in restorative justice is precisely this informal meeting, where victim and offender can speak freely about what they feel, what they think, and so on. So there is always a kind of tension between both approaches. Now the challenge for restorative justice is to find a way to, on the one hand, guarantee this space for free communication, monitored but free communication, and on the other hand, a framework within which is legal.